The 14th year of Chenghua. Arc 3, The Case of Eastern Palace. Chapter 31. Infuriated by Tang Fan, their group cantered in. The night wind cut across their faces, making their robes flap noisily. The palace gate had long been locked up at this time, but with the imperial orders given to the western depot, no one dared to obstruct them. A soldier looked over the warden's identification tokens, then immediately let them through. As for Tang Fan, he got interrogated a bit, only for the warden who had brought him here to mouth the words Eunuch Wang's orders. The faces of those several imperial guards changed drastically. They eventually waved their hands, hurriedly letting them in. Upon entering the palace, one had to dismount. That was an ironclad law that no one could violate. Cabinet ministers and guardian officials like Wang Ji, Shang Ming, and other such powerful eunuchs would at most be ferried on a small palanquin. No one was to be exempted. Everyone had to get off their horses and walk at this point, so Tang Fan and the rest who were with him did so. The wardens who were brought in were in a rush as they took lightning-fast strides like martial artists do. Tang Fan followed them by running for short bursts at a time, but was still unable to keep up with them as he panted hard. They were in such as haste that the leader had to have his subordinates take Tang Fan by the shoulders and arms, half lifting him up, and forced him to walk forward quickly. That was fine with him, since he didn't need to use any extra effort. He stepped upon the slabs of bluestone with only the tips of his toes, as if he had learned Qinggong in a split second. He was so pleased with this breeziness that nice-sounding words came out of his mouth. "This, humble one, is lacking in strength and has burdened you gentlemen." There was a stretch of darkness within the Forbidden City. Distantly, only a few, feebly shining candle flames were lit in the palace ahead. They had to rely on the illumination from the lanterns held by the occasionally passing soldier on duty, as well as the ones their own group carried to light their way. Even though the emperor was as abundantly rich as the four seas, if he made this huge palace well lit all over, it would be a massive expense that even he wouldn't be able to undertake. Tang Fan had never seen the Forbidden City at night before. Since he didn't need to look where they were going himself, he used that comment to distract the people with him from noticing that he was observing the imposing and vast palace complex. What emerged in his heart was not awe nor admiration, but rather the thought that under the cover of darkness, in each and every room of each and every hall in the palace, an unknown amount of appreciation, grudges, passions, hatreds, sorrows and pleasures of the human world had once played out. If it weren't a violation of the law, this would have been a great material to use in his novels. Beneath the light of flickering flames, Tang Fan's profile appeared to be abnormally calm. He was neither panicking from getting summoned into the palace in the middle of the night nor dreaded dealing with the Western Depot. The leader of the wardens wasn't sure why Eunuch Wang had suddenly made him go and fetch this minor official, but Tang Fan's reaction to all of these made him look at him a little differently. Thankfully he could not read what was on Master Tang's mind at this moment, otherwise he would have completely lost it. Including this time, Tang Fan had been here twice. The first time was over 3 years ago when the rankings for the palace exams were being announced, and he had come with many of those who made it to the palace honorates roll that year. The ambience then had been dignified and solemn as they followed the officials to pay respects to the Son of Heaven. Thinking back, the Son of Heaven's elegant bearing had really been, too far away from him. He hadn't seen him clearly. As Tang Fan was not a person from several centuries in the future, it wasn't possible for him to know the layout of the Forbidden City. This was the Emperor's home. The architectural design of the palace obviously had to be kept strictly confidential in order to prevent spies from infiltrating it. If someday in the future, he become one of the high-ranking officials of the 6 ministries, he would then have to frequently enter the palace to participate in politics, and by then would naturally becoming familiar with the palace's layout. At the moment though, he had no clue where they were bringing him and had no choice but to just go with them. They walked for about 2/4 of an hour, passing through one palace gate after another, seeing one palace hall after another. Eventually, their footsteps slowed down. Not too far away, there was a hall with moving human shadows, shining lights, wide open doors and even a good deal of people making patrols around the hall's gates, ready to defend it strictly. Tang Fan knew that they had reached their intended destination. The wardens finally put him down. His heels touching the slightly rough slabs, he abruptly got the feeling of his feet being planted solidly on the ground. Being a human sedan chair made him move fast, but it wasn't enjoyable. His arms faintly ached now. Go. At this point, that had been the only word the leading warden had said this whole time. Do I dare to ask what's inside? He had to whisper. Go in and you'll know. The other refused to explain further. Tang Fan had expected that though. He had just wanted some time to mentally prepare himself. Seeing how the other person had been utterly serious, he had started to have an idea in his mind and didn't ask any more. He went up the steps, accepted a body search and interrogation from the guards at the entrance of the hall, and finally got inside after a long while. The one who was escorting him inside though was not the Western Depot warden that brought him all the way through, but a young eunuch of unfamiliar features. He could assume that this eunuch was often assigned here. The first thing he said to Tang Fan was wait here, and then entered. After waiting for another long while, he came out and said follow me. He turned and went back in. Tang Fan came inside and noticed the various decorations in the hall. He showed nothing on the surface, but he already had an inkling on the inside. Once he was led into the main hall, he caught sight of the people sitting and standing in the middle of it. In the center of them was a middle-aged man in collared robes of yellow silk. Tang Fan didn't stare blankly and forgot himself. He immediately kowtowed to prostrate himself and said, "This subject, Tang Fan, pays respects to His Majesty." "You are exempt from ceremony," the Chenghua emperor said. His voice had an eternal tinge of languidness, and it wasn't because he was feigning laziness, he genuinely was. Tang Fan got up from the bow and stood tall. He didn't raise his head to look all around him. His facial expression as calm as ever. Emperor Chenghua cared not about the arrival of this minor figure and would have never remembered that he had once praised that this man's literary grace and academic knowledge are both of the highest quality. He was tired, but what had happened today was really too serious. Even the 3 cabinet ministers were all still here and have yet to leave the palace. The emperor had no choice but to muster up his energy. He looked towards Wang Ji and said, "In subject Wang, is this the person you have recommended the be brought over here, so if you would?" "Yes, Your Majesty," answered Wang Ji respectfully, completely devoid of the casual arrogance that he exhibited outside of the palace. "Subject Tang Fan," he said. "Here." Tang Fan maintained his posture of a slightly bowed head. Basically, if a subject didn't have permission, they could not casually look straight at the emperor's sacred countenance, as that would seem disrespectful. Even so, back when he had just entered, he had already rapidly taken in everyone on the scene. The emperor and the crown prince were both present. Wanan, Lu Su, Lu Ji, the 3 outstandingly famous paper figure cabinet ministers, were present as well. All the most powerful figures of the empire were all currently present. Needless to say that there were servants, maids, bodyguards, and soldiers present as well. In spite of the number of people though, nobody was making a sound. Only the momentary crackling of the candles in the hall outside could be heard. Within his sight though, he could see that behind where the emperor was, there was a screen with someone's silhouette could be faintly seen behind. It seemed that whoever it was, would be revealed soon enough. Meanwhile, Wang Ji started to explain why he had been summoned. The crown prince, Zhu Yoshan of the East Palace, had grown up in the palace. However, it was only 3 years ago that he had been bestowed the title of crown prince. His journey thought life up to this point could be considered rough. Now that his status had been set though, all of the books he read and characters he wrote needed to be fostered in accordance with the specifications of an heir apparent. The crowned prince have a large group of tutors and a group of study partners to go with. Those study partners were typically inner palace eunuchs that was chosen for him. Sometimes, they would be selected from the sons and nephews of major officials and courtiers. One of his chosen study partners was Han Zhao. His father, Han Fang, had been one of Chenhua's teachers when he was the crown prince. Due to his poor health, Han Fang had intended to resign 2 years prior. However, due to the emperor's regards to his former teacher, he bestowed Han Fang with the empty title of youth minister of the crowned prince, and his son, Han Zhao, went into the palace to be the crowned prince's study partner. He was not to be some kind of servant that would take punishments on the crowned prince's behalf when the latter didn't do his work well, but an actual companion to the crowned prince. Han Zhao was about the same age as the crowned prince. They studied together all day long, making their friendship quite close. Today, when the crowned prince and his group of study partners were in the middle of lessons, Han Zhao had suddenly cried out that his stomach hurt, and before the imperial physician could come over, he soon dropped to the floor, dead. What the hell? The East Palace promptly erupted. Imperial doctors rushed in at top speed to look Han Zhao all over, yet still couldn't tell how he had died. It just so happened that shortly before Han Zhao complained about his stomach, Consort Wan had sent someone over with 2 bowls of mung bean lily soup. The crown prince hadn't eaten any, but Han Zhao had. A series of events had then unfolded as a result. Everyone knew that Consort Wan once had a son. He had been the emperor's eldest, but passed soon after he was born. Later on, the noble consort Lady Bai had borne a son, and he was established as the crowned prince. However, within 2 years of being bestowed the title, he died. Ever since then, no successor had been born in the imperial harem. Everyone claimed that it was because Consort Wan forbade any woman aside from her from having sons. With Lady Wan's influence, she put the crowned prince through all sorts of twists and turns, even now that he was able to see the light of day again. Those who heard of what were done to him were heartbroken, and those who saw what things were done were moved to tears. Honestly, with everything that has been done and said, the cause of Han Zhao's death seemed to be extraordinarily obvious, with no need for an investigation. As the emperor's most favored woman, even if the crown prince had died, she would likely go unpunished for it, to say nothing of the fact that he hadn't. The smartest way to handle this situation would be to quickly downplay the matter, casually find an excuse to gloss it over, and then have everyone maintain an exterior of calm. Yet, a problem came. After Consort Wan learned of this, she was extremely shocked, crying to the high heavens, and immediately ran to the emperor. She swore on the sun itself that she did not have anything to do with the matter. Then she persistently begged him to get to the bottom of it and find out the truth so that her innocence would be proven. It was precisely because the matter involved the crowned prince, Consort Wan, and the son of Chenhua's teacher that Chenghua got an excessive headache, having no choice but to summon his advisor into the palace to discuss how to deal with this. An advisor's job was to help govern the country. The 3 ministers currently heading the cabinet all muddled through their days, and the country wasn't being governed properly. However, that incompetence was not an indication that they could not solve a case such as this. Chief of Cabinet Wanan, considering things from the political angle and the current situation of affairs at large, he proposed that the emperor just gently take the lid off the matter. His Highness the Crowned Prince was thankfully fine regardless. As for Han Zhao, the palace ought to generously compensate the Han family. Everyone would have to be content with that. Consort Wan wouldn't let it go, though. Disregarding whether anyone believed her, she repeatedly insisted that she was totally innocent in this. She understood that everyone knew she loathed the crowned prince and wanted to eliminate him as soon as possible, which was why she was the prime suspect for this. If the emperor really was going to be vague about it, then even a jump in the Yellow River wouldn't wash her clean. Under the insistence of his most cherished woman, Chenghua had to have someone bring the ministers into the palace and another to bring word to the Han family. 2 bowls of mung bean lily soup. The crowned prince hadn't eaten it, and his bowl had been given to Han Zhao, while the remaining bowl had been given to a young chamberlain to have. The chamberlain was fine, but Han Zhao died. Prior to Tang Fan entering the palace, someone had already checked this out. The pot with the sweet soup had nothing left in it, making it impossible to see if anything had been put in the soup itself, but the bowl and spoon themselves were not smeared with poison. If there had been a problem with the soup, how could the attendant who had eaten it remain fine? Was it only in the bowl that Han Zhao had eaten? The one that brought the soup over was a maid from Consort Wan's palace, who wouldn't admit that she had poisoned it no matter what. Besides that, Han Zhao was nothing more than a young child. How could he have any enemies? Given that his death was wanted, the crowned prince would have been killed had he eaten that soup, and who was it that found him to be such an eyesore? All across the palace, there was only one person that fit that. It would be bad to say that out aloud, however, and could not be done so plainly. For that reason, after Wan An's suggestion was rejected by Consort Wan, he flat out spoke no more so that he wouldn't offend her. Though the two shared the surname of Wan, they didn't have a single thread of relation. Simply put, he knew that she received no small amount of Chenghua's favor, so utilizing the fame of Wan name, he took every method he could to claim connection to her and used that to suit comfortably as the chief of cabinet thereafter. In the opinions of others, this was utterly shameless. Everyone privately started to give him the nickname the long-lived cabinet. In addition to that, there were all sorts of ridiculous nicknames for the imperial advisors. The third one, Lu Ji for example. He was Lu Cotton Flower. It was because he was thick-faced and was afraid of getting fluffed. Everyone just straight up called him Lu Cotton Flower whenever they talked about him behind his back. Getting back to the topic at hand, presumably, there was no issue with the soup, nor the bowl, nor the utensils used. The imperial doctor couldn't take a dead person's pulse, nor could he testify whether Han Zhao had been sick to begin with. However, in accordance to the eunuch's and the crown prince statements, he had been perfectly fine and have not suffered any ailments in recent days. If the intention was to poison someone, no one would believe that the target was only the study partners. Everyone was more willing to believe that this was a deliberate attack to poison the current crowned prince. If this were to be thoroughly investigated, who knew how much bad weather would get set off in the palace, or how many people would die unjustly? Chenghua loved the prince, but it was a finite type of love, as the latter hadn't grown up by his side since infancy. Now that he had been given the title of his heir for the sake of the country's stability, Chenghua wasn't stingy with what ought to be given to him. However, he also didn't want to let a storm brew because of this. To say nothing of the fact that deep inside himself, he felt that this had something to do with his precious consort Wan. The crowned prince himself was very sensible. Although grieved from the death of his study partner, he didn't cry and shout to get revenge for him. When the emperor questioned him, he simply said that he would comply with Father Emperor's will. All were hoping that this would get swept under the rug, but Consort Wan refused. His Majesty was both very vexed and unwilling to oppose his favorite woman's wishes, which put the matter at a stalemate. Before Tang Fan arrived, he had already called his two most trusted eunuchs over, Shang Ming of the Eastern Depot and Wang Zhi of the Western Depot. For the sake of monopolizing the merit, Shang Ming actively petitioned for the Eastern Depot to investigate at once, while Wang Zhi understood the emperor's intent. They wanted to know the truth, but also didn't want this matter to be talked about. In the emperor's view, this should be investigated secretly so that in the event it was discovered to be related to Consort Wan, covering it up would be easy. That was why he recommended one person to His Majesty Tang Fan. He had done so for the following reasons: he was smart, presently appointed as a prefect of Shuntian Prefecture, extraordinarily suited for his occupation, and had done an outstanding job in the Marquis of Wuan's estate case before. They could have him come and do the investigation. The emperor approved, and Tang Fan subsequently entered the palace. Bystanders were curious as to when Tang Fan had built a connection with eunuch Wang. After hearing the full sequence of events, Tang Fan only wanted to smile bitterly. Wasn't this just Wang Zhi pushing him into a pit of fire? Who would want to get stained by such a sticky situation? This imperial eunuch was indeed young, brash, and the utmost of headstrong, doing whatever with just one thought about it. This wasn't pressing, yet he had still towed Tang Fan down into its water. Tang Fan, now that you've learned what's happened, what opinion do you have regarding the case? Wang Zhi asked. With regards to Wang Zhi's contemptuous and acting without regards to his wishes, Tang Fan was totally revolted. However, he was not one to harbor grudges. Now that he had already been placed upon the bonfire and was in the presence of the emperor and the cabinet, he had no right to decline. His fury simply passed in a flash, getting repressed to the bottom of his heart soon after. Then, he began to ponder how to settle this. This humble official's skills are limited, and I dare not speak random drivel before His Majesty and all the royal advisors, he said after some thought. I have currently only heard a general idea of the situation. Since I have neither seen Han Zhao's body nor interrogated all the person concerned in this case, there is thus nothing I can comment on for the time being. Chenghua was a bit disappointed hearing this. It wasn't as if he was expecting Tang Fan to immediately uncover the whole truth, cause if he did, wouldn't he be as powerful as the gods? Still, he couldn't resist grumbling to Wang Zhi at those words. In subject Wang, you were just saying how formidable this man is. In our opinion, he's just like those imperial censors outside, whose gift of glib is unrivaled in the land. Tang Fan's eyes observed his own nose, and his nose observed his own chest, playing dead as if the emperor wasn't talking about him at all. Wang Zhi inwardly thought that this Tang Fan didn't know how to appreciate a favor, as he wasn't rushing to show off his good faith. In fact, he was merely just standing there at the side like he was made of wood. Do tolerate my advice, Your Majesty, he quickly replied. Many things are currently in a tangled knot, so discovering anything straight away is a genuine challenge. It would be best to request that waiting period be extended for just a bit and allow him to take his time investigating. In fact, during the nominations of imperial honorates in the 11th year of Chenghua, he ranked first of the second bracket and had even been praised by His Majesty himself at the time. For the sake of confirming that he actually did have good insight, he shifted out an old event of the past. Chenghua lifted his eyelids, dimly recalling that such a thing had indeed happened before. His impression of Tang Fan slightly improved. As that's so, this case will be handed over to you to take care of, subject Tang Fan. However, the emperor glanced at Wang Zhi. Understanding tacitly, Wang Zhi promptly picked up, this case is of immense importance. You absolutely cannot speak casually about it to the outside world, or else you will be heavily punished. Beneath the crowd's watching eyes, Tang Fan finally spoke, but they were words that startled the heavens. This subject doesn't dare to accept this order. What? Is this man crazy? Did he even know what he was saying? How could he act like that in a setting like this? Everybody, including the servants and guards serving as backdrops, couldn't help but stare wide-eyed at Tang Fan. Chief of Cabinet Wanan hurriedly shouted his condemnations in front of everyone. How impetuous of you, Tang Fan! How dare you not respect His Majesty's will? Is there respect for no one in your eyes? Wang Zhi was even more furious. He knew that Tang Fan was likely grumbling about this assignment on the inside, but he had made his own calculations. Even if he was not happy about this, he had no choice but to obediently go along with his orders when put in this situation. How could the guest's voice overpower that of the host's? Who did this impudent prefect of 6th rank think he was? The emperor's words were law, yet he said he didn't dare to accept his order? Wasn't that basically slapping His Majesty in the face? Tang Fan, have you gone mad? Where do you think this is? Are you allowed to be impudent here? If you dare to object, may Xianzhong and Shanglu be lessons to you. Xianzhong was the former Minister of War and Shanglu was the former Chief of Cabinet. Both had fallen from their positions because they had opposed eunuch Wang. One was relieved of his duties and returned to civilian life while the other one resigned and ran off. Wang Zhi bringing them up was clearly to threaten him: if you still dare to object further, then their end will be yours. Wanan mentally shook his head, thinking to himself that eunuch Wan had let anger reign his heart for him to speak so irresponsibly like this. It was obvious that Tang Fan was only a 6th-rank prefect right now, yet he took out those two as examples. Wasn't that instead elevated Tang Fan's status up? Chenghua then frowned, glaring at Tang Fan with an annoyed expression. He was not the kind of emperor who was fond of killing, which was his one good aspect. If he didn't like someone much, he would either get them dismissed from their post with a small wave of his hand, or demote them off to a punitive sentence which would be terrible enough as it was for the one in question. Crowned Prince Zhu Yoshan similarly didn't say a word, but he gazed at Tang Fan inquisitively. It had been a very long time since the incident had occurred. It was supposed to be his bedtime hour now, but because this was related to him, he couldn't go to sleep yet. Even so, he didn't exude any sort of impatient expression despite his tiredness. He remained standing beside his father, as respectful and solemn as before. When the tempest of rebukes came to an end, Tang Fan simply cupped his hands and started to speak at ease. "Your Majesty, please excuse this humble subject's words. As a prefect, I can judge the hearts of the dead, but not those of the living. With a rough look at this case, I fear that the degree of complication in it far exceeds imagination. For that reason, if His Highness hand this great responsibility over to me, I won't dare to decline it, but there are some things that I cannot help but ask to understand this clearly. Please absolve this subject of blame. Feel free to ask." "You're absolved," Chenghua replied. Tang Fan nodded. "Then this humble one will be so bold as to ask, can you guarantee that this truly had nothing to do with Consort Wan, Your Majesty?" That statement was even more startling than the one just before. Everyone there thought that Tang Fan was not only insane but brainless. That topic was fine placed in one's head, but was it something that shouldn't be said out loud? Even Wanan was stunned, after which he couldn't help but mentally shake his head. He thought differently from the others, though this was marvelous, truly marvelous. Tang Fan was well aware that a certain someone was present, so he had purposefully asked this in order to come out on top. He exposed the true crux of the situation out in the open to avoid plots against himself in the future. Wanan recalled that 3 years back, it was his own words that had caused this young man, who originally should have been picked as the prime scorer, to instantly become a thoroughly cooked duck, only for him to apparently fly off anyways. Exactly as expected, while Wanan was thinking it, the one behind the screen was quickly no longer able to contain themselves and stepped out in a biting rage. "If it was my doing, then may the heavens strike me down with lightning for a horrid death. If it was not, then may the heavens strike down and wipe out your entire family." End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 32. The sun is rising in the west. Lady Wan's manner, as expected, was that of a pampered concubine. Her tones were extraordinary as soon as she opened her mouth. However, Tang Fan was still heard to use that calm voice of his. "This humble one felt compelled to inform the lady consort that my parents have long passed and my older sister has been married off, and thus not being of the Tang family. Strictly speaking, my entire family is already wiped out." The corners of everyone's mouths twitched, all flabbergasted by those words. Even Lady Wan was taken aback, instantly forgetting what she was about to curse at him. Tang Fan changed the subject. "This humble one stated earlier that as a prefect, I can judge the minds of the dead but not the living. Having heard what the lady consort said, this humble one can pursue this investigation with peace in my heart." He had already gotten roped into this, and once one had ridden a tiger, it would be hard to get off. He had no option but to accept the assignment. Consort Wan had denied in front of everyone that this had anything to do with her, which was tantamount to pledging an oath under public eye. With that statement, Tang Fan would suffer relatively few impediments during investigation. However, he didn't believe that this totally had no relation to her just because she said so. A direct poisoning method might seem stupid, but if it worked, it wasn't an impossibility. Lady Wan was the most favored in the imperial harem, so even if the crowned prince died, the emperor still might not hold it against her and might even help her find excuse to absolve her of blame. With that in mind, why wouldn't she take the gamble? The case was likely not complex overall, but the fact that all the figures involved were not simple at all was enough to give one endless headache. Originally, a case like this should not have ever been Tang Fan's responsibility to bear. It should have at least gone to the Ministry of Justice or Court of Judicial Review. But because the one who had recommended him was Wang Zhi, who was considered to be on Consort Wan's side, the present cabinet ministers pretty much refused to oppose the emperor on this. Thus, an uncomfortable silence enveloped the whole scene at the moment, with no one uttering a verbal objection. However, if one carefully thought things through, there had always been a lot of oddities that happened throughout the Ming Dynasty. There was the Empress Dowager that had adopted a son and treated him like she had birthed him, and every official in it playing deaf and dumb, an emperor that had been taken hostage by foreigners, a consort that was 16 years older than the emperor yet could still be so favored, and an imperial eunuch of no more than 20 years of age that every government official dreaded. In view of these, allowing a minor prefect of the 6th rank to come investigate this high-profile case didn't seem so hard to accept. Chenghua yawned, truly tired from over half a day of tumult. Since that's so, then it shall be so. It's late now, so the crowned prince will first return to rest. All the ministers may also return. Your Majesty, the case. Wang Zhi inquired. Chenghua waved him off. Let's speak more of it tomorrow. Tang Fan may also return and enter the palace again tomorrow. When he has anything he needs to ask or investigate, you should cooperate with him as much as possible, in subject Wang. Wang Zhi just wanted that confirmation. Consort Wan walked over to latch onto Chenghua's arm, looking coldly at Tang Fan for a while. I am clean of implication, she said pointedly. I ask that you be sure to get to the bottom of this, Master Tang, so that I don't have to suffer needless notoriety. Tang Fan appeared to have not heard her warning. Cupping his hands he said, this subject will do all that I can. Once the emperor and crowned prince had left, the three ministers naturally didn't want to hang around much either and instantly left in haste. Shang Ming, after having allowed Wang Zhi to snatch the limelight, vented the sum of his anger onto Tang Fan with an unreadable smile. This case will burn your hand, Master Tang. You better shape up. If you don't find things out, your little life will be strung up. Tang Fan gave an "oh" and said, many thanks for your pointers, Eunuch Shang. Wang Zhi gave an insincere smile and said, Shang Ming, you can't say I didn't warn you. You shouldn't always be thinking of fighting for power in every strife, but should consider how to help in solving the problems with nobles. If you have the ability to go find the murderer, the lady consort would remember it as a great favor from you. The eastern and western depots had always been at odds with each other. Shang Ming and Wang Zhi practically had a substantial amount of fire coming out of their eyes as they watched each other. In the end, Shang Ming just rolled his eyes and huffed. Don't be proud of yourself too soon. If this man can't put forward a pleasing result, you're going to be out of luck alongside him. With that, he swiveled around by the waist and left with a fling of his sleeves. Looking at his retreating back, Wang Zhi laughed coldly. Then turned to Tang Fan and said, I'll send you off from the palace, Master Tang. Tang Fan knew that he had something he wanted to say, so he didn't decline. They left the palace, then walked down the road towards the palace gate. Wang Zhi only permitted anyone unrelated to follow from a distance while he himself walked shoulder to shoulder with Tang Fan, each of them holding a lantern. Eunuch Wang, you and I have never had any grudges, nor enmity, yet you've caused me disastrous trouble, Tang Fan said bluntly. Wang Zhi chuckled and said, riches and honor are sought in danger. You're such an intelligent man, isn't it a pity that you're subordinate to an average superior like Pan Ben? If you can help clear up Consort Wan's unjust accusation away, this will be an enormous boon and a lucky turn of events. Isn't it about time for you to get promoted, gain glory and rise up in the world. Tang Fan had no expression when he replied, "You think too highly of me. In all likelihood, not only would this one not get me promotion but would also enable me to ensure my own life. This was an outright incident that no one wanted to happen. You're aware of why I sit equally to Shang Ming, right? Way back when the Western Depot had been established, there had also been an incident. Since what had already happened, we went and turned that incident into an opportunity. You don't need to go around in circles, Eunuch Wang. If you have something to say, just go on ahead." Wang Zhi didn't mind the other man's tone. "I may as well explain the whole of it to you, first. This hadn't been Consort Wan's doing, as she would have never intensely demanded for His Majesty to launch a thorough investigation otherwise. Furthermore, she secretly already has an idea of who is behind this. Would you like to venture a guess as to who is it?" Tang Fan lightly quirked a brow. Wang Zhi didn't keep him in suspense for long. Drawing out his words, he continued, "She thinks this was the crowned prince's doing." Tang Fan's brows shot up, then proceeded to furrow deeply. "With your intelligence, it should not be too difficult to put things together, is it? I assume you have heard of the death of the crowned prince's birth mother 3 years back. Consort Wan believes that despite his young age back then, he still remembers everything. So, he's harboring a grudge and wants to take his vengeance with this." Tang Fan frowned and said, "But he's still so young then." "True, but there's some devoted people around him." Wang Zhi cut him off. "Aren't you civil officials think highly of him? Consort Wan had dominated the imperial harem for many years. Whenever an heir was born in the palace, he would never escape the fate of an early death. The survival of Zhu Yushan could be called a miracle. With the help of eunuch Zhang Min, who was assigned at Consort Wan's side, the deposed Empress Lady Wu, Empress Dowager Zhou, eunuch Huai, who was a wielder of the seal, and of countless maids and servants, Zhu Yushan managed to evade Consort Wan's eyes and ears until he could live long enough to be appointed as the crowned prince. One could only imagine how furious Consort Wan was when she heard the news. At that time, there were no other heir at the emperor's knees apart from Zhu Yushan, who was the foremost and oldest son in records and name. Meanwhile, there was no way for Consort Wan to put him back into his mother's womb, nor any way to prevent him from being established as the crowned prince. 3 years earlier, at the end of the very same year Zhu Yushan had been named the crowned prince, his birth mother, Lady Ji, died of sudden illness. Although there was no evidence for it, a lot of factors indicated that it had been Consort Wan's doing. Seeing as the crowned prince title had been set, she wanted him to be recognized under her own name. The existence of Lady Ji was a hindrance to that, so she had to die. Following that, the crowned prince appeared to be holding a grudge in his heart. He treated Consort Wan with a strange courtesy, never approaching her easily of his own accord. With her plan to raise the crowned prince to maturity foiled, she began to loathe him again. She felt that he was like this because he had never forgotten the death of his birth mother, and that there would come a day that he would take revenge on her. Those past events were no sort of secret. Even Tang Fan knew a thing or two about them. "That idea Pan Ben gave me last time to improve relations with the East Palace, that had actually been yours, right?" Wang Zhi asked, tone languid. After hearing those words, I felt that they made exceptional sense. Who could have known that an opportunity would now readily bring itself to our door? If you can prove that this case have nothing to with Consort Wan, and at the same, wasn't the crown prince's doing, not only will she view you favorably, but he'll be thankful to you, too. Do you still need me to explain more about the benefits you could get from this? Ever since Wang Zhi had referred to the crowned prince, Tang Fan knew what he was about to say. He smiled indifferently and said, "Eunuch Wang, that plan was for you, not me. Since the case has now come into my hands, how I will investigate it will naturally be in accordance to my own standards. In contrast, since you recommended me, if I didn't manage to solve this case, you will definitely be implicated." Tang Runking, You better not mess around. I'm warning you, the other raged. Did I not say it clearly enough? With your intelligence and methods, isn't the direction this goes entirely within your control? When this is all done, we'll both benefit. Do you not know how to appreciate a favor? Tang Fan retained his calm as he replied, you didn't consult with me beforehand. Now that the matter has come to this point, you forced it onto my head. Is it too spiteful? Yes, we would both benefit were things to go like you say, but I wouldn't be able to hide from my conscience. Even if one acting as an official cannot do good for the citizens, they, at the very least, cannot distort the truth. Now, we're all on the same boat. I can only promise you that I will do my utmost with the investigation. How the ultimate truth goes isn't up to what you say nor what I say, but what the facts say. At this point in the conversation, they had already gotten near to the palace gates. Tang Fan spoke to him no more. He handed his nearly dead lantern into the hands of the young eunuch that had been guiding them in the front. Then, in contrast to his snail's pace earlier, he took big strides as he stepped out of the gate. The night wind blew the flaps of his robes to the side. When one stared into the distance, Tang Fan looked so small in contrast to the vastness of the imperial palace, as well as so aloofly independent. The tiny and indistinct figure seemed like he would leave on the breeze. Wang Zhi didn't go to catch up with him, but merely stood in place with his eyes narrowed, watching his retreating figure gradually getting further away. Eunuch Wang, the wind gets strong in the deep of night. Try not to catch a chill. The young eunuch gathered in from behind, showing him some care, eager to please. Wang Zhi said nothing, his expression deep and unfathomable. After a long time, he let out a mocking laugh. I thought that he'd be another Lu Cotton Flower, but I hadn't expected to run into a Shanghongzhe, civil officials. Humph. The young eunuch understood nothing, his face was full of confusion. Tang Fan hadn't bumped into Suizhou when he entered the palace, nor did he see him after he got home. It wasn't until the light of daybreak was in the sky and when he had a little bit of sleep, that he heard the faint sound of the courtyard door getting pushed open. He draped clothes over himself to go see. Suizhou had indeed returned. The latter didn't conceal the drain and exhaustion all across his face, though his appearance and expression were as stern and sharp as ever. He looked up to see Tang Fan coming out from the inside and his brows promptly knitted together. I heard you also went last night. Tang Fan nodded. Yes. Those brows knit even tighter. You shouldn't have. Tang Fan spread out his hands. As someone working as a government official, it was not up to me. Seeing as Suizhou was still looking imposing, he couldn't help but let out a pht. It's fine, the boat will find a straight current. You haven't eaten breakfast yet, right? Let's go. Let's go out and find a breakfast stall. Get something to warm your stomach before anything else so that you get a bit of energy. At this hour, those who ought to be at court had long gone to court, and those that ought to have gone to the bureau had long been sitting in the bureau. Tang Fan had been in the palace for most of last night, and he had also been shouldered with the East Palace case, so his mind was a bit convoluted. He straight up prepared to take sick leave, then fill out the forms for it when he went to the bureau tomorrow. This area where they lived was a residential district, and there were a lot of breakfast-selling stalls on the street. The two of them randomly picked out one that had yushao and yubbing, then sat down, ordering a plate of yushao and 2 cups of soy milk. Tang Fan explained to Suizhou what had happened last night. Suizhou roughly knew the circumstances already. Following Han Zhao's death, the Jinyue had received the news and entered the palace soon after. Because the situation was not clear at that time, on top of the event 2 years ago where the sorcerer Li Zilong had schemed to seize the palace still being fresh in the mind, the personnel of the Northern Administrative Court Division had been divided into several groups, then separately assigned for security duty all over the palace. Due to his rank being comparatively high and his connection with Empress Dowager Zhou, Suizhou knew a bit more about it but still didn't get the amount of details that Tang Fan had. After the others' recounting, his understanding consequently became clearer. The two sat in a corner and whispered quietly to each other within the bustling market. Since one of them were wearing the terrifying uniform of the Chenghua, no one dared to come near, which made it easy to speak and not worry about someone overhearing. Listening to the end of it, Suizhou had a chill in his eyes. Wang Zhi doesn't have good intentions, he stated outright. Tang Fan nodded, smiling bitterly. That, he did. All that has cause will have an effect. I didn't expect that me giving Pan Ben an idea would have wound around to come right back at me. What do you plan on doing now, then? Suizhou asked with mild concern. Tang Fan smiled. With things as they are now, what else can be done than the very word investigate? It's merely how I'll investigate, and where, that will need careful consideration. However, when I was in the palace last night, all I heard was Wang Zhi's one-sided account. His Majesty and Consort Wan had both been present, so there definitely had to be a lot of things that can't be openly spoken of. Did your office get any information? I'll investigate with you, Suizhou answered with no hesitation. Tang Fan shook his head. Just me alone is enough. How could I drag you into this? If I don't handle this well, I'll be losing my black hat. I'll be fine. I still can't treat a friend like this, though. Tang Fan said, resolutely. Suizhou gave him a profound look and said, since we're friends, there's no need to decline. My mind is set. Tang Fan was a bit touched. After being close friends for a while, he knew that Suizhou was someone cold on the outside but warm on the inside. That warmth wasn't directed towards everyone either, but only for those he cared about. Take Dong, for example. Tang Fan was well aware that if she wasn't his adopted sister, the man would have never attached any importance to her. Even so, the friendship between himself and Suizhou had not been one forged by many years, as theirs had only been built up via the Marquis of Wuan's estate case. White hairs like new, a first meeting like old friends. Some people just innately shared such rapport. Friendship did not need a long period of time as long as the people involved were compatible with each other. As the old folks said, it relied on fate for an affinity at first meeting. What great fortune Tang Fan had to come across a friend like this. With those words said, rejecting him would just be a slap in the face. Tang Fan grinned easily and said, then, it would be rude of me to refuse. Suizhou looked placid and agreed, it would be. He paused, then said, I didn't really receive any other information than you did, but I can confirm one thing, Han Zhao definitely didn't pass of sudden illness. Tang Fan mustered his energy. That sentence was so important, it could directly determine what direction their investigation went. How could you say that? He hurriedly asked. Han Zhao was born to Han Fang at an old age of 40. His family spoiled him so, making him exceptionally mischievous. He had been strong-bodied since childhood, frequently climbing up trees and going into water. 3 days ago, he and the Crown Prince dined at the Empress Dowager's place, which coincided with an imperial doctor coming in for a routine checkup. She then asked him to examine Han Zhao. At the time, he concluded that Han Zhao was healthy while the Crown Prince seemed a bit inherently feeble. Tang Fan mulled that over. Since you say that, is Han Zhao's cause of death truly does involve poison put into that bowl of soup? Suizhou shook his head. I'm not sure. After the incident, the body got moved to the Western Depot. If we're going to investigate, it needs to be done as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll be waiting until the corpse rots or the Han family comes asking for it, which will make things even more tricky. Tang Fan nodded. You didn't sleep at all last night over this, so go home and take a rest. I'll go to the Western Depot. Suizhou gave him a look. He said nothing, but his message was obvious. You're a feeble scholar that hasn't cried out that he's tired, so how could I be more tired than you? They finished their breakfast, then headed straight for the Western Depot. Suizhou's Chenghua uniform was rather glaring there, but Tang Fan had received an imperial decree to handle this case. The wardens had presumably been informed of this. As soon as Tang Fan announced his identity, they were let in. The team leader that admitted them used to be a Chenghua called Bnu. Judging by the way he acted, he still recognized Sui Zhou. His attitude towards them was very cordial. Eunuch Wang said, we were to do our utmost to comply with you if you wanted to check anything out, Master Tang. Han Zhao's body is indeed kept here. The Han family had come once in the early morning, but we didn't hand it over. Tang Fan nodded. First, I'd like to meet the palace maid consort Wan had sent to deliver the soup. I heard she's here, as well. Yes, she was brought over last night. I'll take you to her. He gave Sui Zhou another glance, smiling with a hint of awkwardness. General Sui Beihu, you know that the Western Depot and Chenghua have never gotten along very much. If Eunuch Wang knew that I let you in here, he'd definitely put me on the hook for it. I won't put you on the hook. Wang Zhi's voice resonated outwardly and the three's eyes followed the sound. The founder and current director of the Western Depot walked over, a smile on his face. Ah, Brother Runking. Did you sleep well last night? He and Tang Fan had clearly had a disagreement yesterday evening that could be described as a near falling out, where Wang Zhi had pointed at Tang Fan's nose and told him to not turn his back on a favor. The latter wasn't afraid of him, but he definitely didn't believe that the other would be magnanimous enough to not hold a grudge, either. However, after a separation of only half a night, Eunuch Wang acted like he had totally forgotten the previous night's unpleasantness. Proud and tyrannical before the masses, careful and prudent before the emperor and the consort. The very first time he had met Tang Fan, he was condescending, but now he was very cordial. A very good illustration of the multiple faces of a high-profile personality. As the saying went, those floating through Jianghu would not survive without learning a couple of extraordinary skills, and this chief eunuch might be young, but he was fully adept in the art of face changing. Tang Fan wasn't to be outdone in this though. Smiling slightly, he said, thank you for your concern, Eunuch Wang. Having met royalties last night, I was very excited yet nervous, tossing and turning as I slept. How about you? When had Bnu ever seen the indifferent chief eunuch give someone a kindly look before? His jaw almost dropped to the floor in shock. Even if the chief of cabinet arrived, Eunuch Wang would probably love to put on an air of indifference towards him, but now he was putting on a rarely seen smile at the direction of a minor, 6th rank official. The sun really was rising in the west today. End chapter.